Hey, welcome to an evening with the foreigner of Philippines. And you know, I worked with a guy who also worked with another guy, and we were talking about getting old, and I was so much older than he was that of course he was telling me his stories of people who were much older. And one of the stories that made me smile was that he had worked with a guy who said that he didn't mind getting old. He said, "Hey, hell, I don't mind getting old. I can be a cranky old man." He said, I can fart and swear and be cranky, and I can be grumpy, and what the heck, I'm an old man, so who can tell me otherwise? And even though I was a long way from where I am right now, I actually thought that was quite funny. Well, here I am, and one of the things that I've found is that if you really love someone, there'll be times when, if you're really honest with yourself, you'll find that you should be trying to make up for some of your behaviour. But then there are the normal times when you take it for granted that you're in the right, and yet somehow it's not going wrong, or not going right, I should say, that it's going wrong, not going right. And I'm thinking about that, something I learned from my lovely wife. When we first talked about getting together, we were very much aware of the difference in our age. Now, back then, it's 7 years ago, but believe it or not, 7 years ago I was pretty fit. I'd just come from San Fernando, where I'd been training in a boxing club in San Fernando with my son. My son, Theo, is something of a lethal weapon when it comes to Muay Thai. Muay Thai, he has been abroad to, I think it's Thailand, but whether it's Bangkok or not, I don't know, and it doesn't really matter. He went abroad for months at a time, and all they did, he and his friends, all they did was go to the gym every day and train all day. And for some young Thai kids, that was a way out of poverty if they could become good at that. But of course, for my son, he wasn't there for that purpose. He was there because he loved Muay Thai and became good at it. And probably all of my sons are good at martial arts. Which brings me to the fact that this is not 7 years ago or 8 years ago, and even though 7 years ago I was able to, believe it, I was able to go 8 rounds at the boxing club. You could buy 8 rounds training with a skilled guy who could do, and it's a very skilled thing. If you look at Mike Tyson training, you'll see how incredibly skilled those people are who go on the pads. So they can predict the way that it's going to go, and they can tell the boxer, no matter how good or bad he is, they can tell him where they're going to be in a moment. So they can say jab, they can say uppercut, and they can guide the whole thing at lightning fast, or as good as the person they're training is. Well, I was well into my 70s even then, of course, and so even though people did admire that I could do what I could do, I still wasn't giving any great challenges to the guy on the pads. But the way that they used to handle it was that everything was done on a timer. So we went 3 minutes, and then the bell rang, and we sat down for a moment, just like they do in a boxing match. And when that time was up, we got up and the clock started again, and off we went. And believe me, that is extremely challenging physically. By about, I said 8 rounds, by about 6 rounds you'd almost pay to have the guy let you off the last 2. But I persevered, and I was able to do that, and with the corresponding fitness. So when I came here, it was no problem to walk from here to the road because we didn't have any transport. So we used to walk, and actually I stayed fit for a long time. It was only when we got the bike and then the multi-cab that a gradual decline occurred. And while the decline was going down, my age was going up. And so here we are. So even though I have the right to be a cranky old man, today I'm going to suggest to you that if you find that you're being critical of the lovely lady or the lovely gentleman in your life, and the last thing that you want to do is to do something nice for them, this is one thing that I did today. I asked Beth, I actually had the coffee ready, the water is ready to make coffee, and I took it off so that I could speak. And this is what I do when I ask Beth, what do you want? And she says, an orange. So if I gave her an orange, that would be a big thing, wouldn't it? Well, I asked what you wanted, and I gave you what you wanted. So this is what I do to make it a great kindness. I got my sharp knife and I take it round in a circle around the sphere of the orange. And then I go at right angles and I do the same again. And all the time, don't laugh when I say this, but I think thoughts of love. And I'm not talking about humping, okay? I'm talking about opening your heart. Well, once you've gone round both ways, then you have to come and you have to do the small parts. So you have to come round and do it again. And the idea is that it tells that lovely person that you probably are taking for granted how much you love them. Alright, as I said, don't laugh, because this is a labour of love, and you can't laugh when you're doing a labour of love, even if you're Filipino. So now, even though I'm talking and distracted, I have done what I wanted to do, and I've made it so that it shows how easy it's going to be. And I take the top off, and now all of those ready. Now you don't want to take too much, because then there'll be no fun in finding out how easy your labour of love really has been. So here we have an orange, and she'll know that you love her, and that's the whole purpose. And even if you have your old man, grumpy old man, cranky old man rights to observe and claim, this might be a chance and a way of just saying simply, I love you. So I'm going, that water is still pretty well hot, but I've made her coffee and I put a little bit of my coffee in with hers because she likes it strong, and I'll give her this orange. And I won't spoil the moment by videoing it, but telling someone that you love them is probably the most important statement that you'll make in your life. With all of the children, I make a point of telling them I love them. I make a point of giving them a hug. I make a point of telling them something special about themselves that they will enjoy hearing. With Talik Lick, she is tall, elegant, skinny as a rail, and loves to dress up. So she is my fashionista Talik. And sometimes I call her Pandora. With Bibi, ever since I have known her, no matter what angle you take a photograph of that child, she is beautiful. So I call her Beautiful Bibi. I'm still trying to work out what I should call Lovely, but then with a name like Lovely, how much more can you do? So I'm going to make the coffee now. And I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope that you will probably find a better way to do this, or find something else. But if it is that you have someone that you love very much, try to think back on the last time that you said, I love you. And I think you'll find it's amazingly long since you did that. When I was once around Pastor Timio's house, and all of his family were out on the porch, and I guess out of mischief, I said to Timio, do you tell your wife that you love her? No. Why? She knows. To his wife. Do you tell your husband you love him? No. To the children, one by one. Do you tell your mother, your father, your sister, your brother that you love them? Everybody gets uncomfortable. Now this is something that is strange about what I've encountered in the Philippines, that they don't tell each other that they love them. So how do they know? With Talik Lick, she bonded with me immediately. Soon after getting here, we started to build this house, which, because of finance, I had to build myself. And because of that, I built it in a material that I could lift myself and make walls and ceilings and roofs and everything, just by doing creative design on how I was going to do it. Talik was there with me. I did everything with a drill, a pair of tin snips, and, let me see, a rivet gun, and pretty well that was what we did it. In fact, I did a video back then saying that I built the house with $100 of tools, and it was that. A saw, not a mechanical saw, not an electric sawzall, a saw, a proper hand saw, a hammer, I had one chisel, I had a 1-inch chisel, a Stanley knife. I had these very simple things, and I built them. But Tallaght at the end of the day, she always came and she held and loaded the rivet gun. So when I drilled a hole in the bottom of the stud, I needed then to put the drill down and put, if I did it myself, I would have to put a rivet into the riveter and then put it in and bang it in. But she did that for me. And even though she didn't talk very much, she was my pal. And in the evening, when we sat down and I sat on the couch, she would come and sit next to me, and while I'm sitting there like this, she would reach over and take my hand and she would put it around her so that I was sitting with her with my arm around her, and that became our ritual. But I think that I was the first person to ever tell her that I loved her, that ever said those words, I love you. And that's what alerted me to ask at the Timeo family, don't any of you tell each other? And the answer was no. I asked Tallaght, do you tell your mother? Do you tell Lena you love her? And Tallaght would do her, this was her way of saying, I'm not comfortable with this question. So the answer was no. Had anybody ever hugged you, Tallaght, before me? No. And any of the children will tell you this. Now, for all of the teasing that Lovely takes, there are times, very often, probably most every day, and I take her and I bring her face so that she knows that I'm going to say something serious. And I think, this is a guess, but I think there's a kind of a little adrenaline rush there. Oh, it's the foreigner and he's going to ask me an awkward question. And so you kind of get their attention. And then I tell them, no matter what anybody else teases you about, not Nanai, not Beth, not Tallaght or Bibi, I love you very, very much. And I make sure that I rivet into those eyes so that she really knows it's true. Now once I was reading about research that was done with children, and they asked children what they thought, what were their thoughts on love. And the one that really struck me as being important was the girl of about 8 years old. I said, what are your thoughts on love? Obviously they had chosen children who were articulate, not like some of our kids who as soon as you ask them a question and they know the camera is on, it goes like that. They asked the little girl, what are your thoughts on love? And the child said, I think if you love somebody, you need to tell them that you love them. But once you've told them, you need to tell them again, often, again and again, because they forget. So, if you are looking at ways to make the lovely person in your life realize that maybe there's something special going on in your mind, as I say, not humping, okay? And you get to say I love you. There it is. Thanks for looking in. Good night.